Right, well, I don't know if you guys remember this, but about the time when the Switch was first announced and we first got some actual detail, though obviously Nintendo are always quite sketchy on the detail, and we found out about the fact that it had 32 gig of internal storage, some of us were saying that that was going to be a problem and that Nintendo were, well, going to find problems with getting third-party support simply because of the capacity. And some of the fanboys did their usual little dance and said that that wasn't going to be a problem. And one of the reasons they gave was that the Switch had cartridges and you would buy the game on cartridges. Well, obviously my response was that many games would be too big for cartridges. And I also mentioned that there would be a problem with digital downloads of games. But this didn't seem to bother some people, and they, did their usual thing of sticking their fingers in their ears and singing la 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 la. But one thing I didn't actually mention at the time was that most games these days get a day one patch, and those day one patches vary in size, anything from megabytes up to gigabytes. So the potential's there for the Nintendo to require a large amount of space to be taken up for these day one patches. So now let's fast forward to the announcement of Lego City Undercover for the Switch, which is due for release on April the 7th. Now, initially, when that was announced, there was a big hoo-ha, basically. And the reason for that was that the box suggested that it would be required that it be online and that it was going to need a 13 gig download just to allow the game to work. Now, I looked at this and I thought that sounded a bit off. And as it turns out, that is the case. And the download is not going to be anywhere near that sort of size. In fact, if we look at what was said to Polygon by Warner Brothers in a statement that was trying to clarify the situation, this is what they said. The information is listed incorrectly on the packaging of Lego City Undercover for the Nintendo Switch. Players who purchase a physical copy of Lego City Undercover on Nintendo Switch at retail are getting the complete game and do not need to download additional content to enjoy the full experience. But they also went on to add, internet connection is not required to play the game. The only internet connection suggested is to download the typical content update patch. So they're kind of contradicting themselves a little bit there. They're saying that the full experience doesn't require additional content, and then they're saying that you will need to download a update patch. They do say that you can play it without the update patch, but given that that's probably going to sort out some issues, minor issues that the game may have, you'll probably want to download it. The problem there is, and Polygon bring this up themselves, is that it's not clear what a typical content patch is. And as we already know, some of these patches can be significant in size. I'm not suggesting that this patch is going to be anything like the patch that we got for Forza Horizon, which I think was something like 6 gig. But nevertheless, this does open up the potential that we may, in future, be getting some pretty hefty download patches for the Switch. And that, of course, then raises the question again about capacity. And you can stick your fingers in your ears and, sing la 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 as much as you like. But the fact of the matter is, if you're going to need patches, and you probably are going to need patches, then, the Switch is going to run out of memory very, very quickly. Lego City Undercover is an old game. It's been out for a while now, so you would have expected them to have had everything ready for the game on launch. So when it comes out, it shouldn't need a patch, or, it shouldn't need a significant patch. So I would expect this patch to be tiny. But moving forward, we're going to get games coming out that are newer. And we all know, regardless of what Nintendo might like, we all know that a lot of these games, when they come out, they don't have everything set. So you get a lot of games and they do need to be patched either day one or, down the line. And the worst example of this is probably something like No Man's Sky. But we've seen it with countless games, and nearly every game now comes out and it's released broken in some way. It's just a fact of life. And none of us as gamers like that. But You're not telling me that third parties are going to make a special effort to try and make the game work particularly well with Switch. Not unless Nintendo are bunging them a load of money or something, or giving them some other incentives to make it available for the Switch perfect from day one. And that actually is likely to mean that those games are going to release a lot later on the Switch. So we're going to find ourselves in one of two situations. Either those games are going to come out a lot later on the Switch, or they're going to come out like they do on the other systems, broken from day one, and they're going to be needing a patch to fix those problems. And if they're going to need a patch to fix those problems, we're back to that situation of storage again. And the fact that the Switch only has 32 gig of storage capacity, and you can't get away from that. And I know people are going to say, oh, you just put an SD card in. But I've already covered this. Micro SD cards are not cheap. And you're going to find yourself spending a lot of money buying a decent sized micro SD card to cover these patches, to cover DLC. And I've not even covered DLC here. If you're looking at DLC, we already know that Breath of the Wild is getting DLC. We don't know how big that's going to be. But some of these DLC packages are huge on these games. So, we're going to end up in a situation where you're going to run out of space very quickly. And I said this when we heard about the capacity on the Switch, and people were arguing with me then. And I know that people are going to argue with me again, but the facts don't support your position. They simply don't. You're going to find yourself juggling. I already know people who juggle with 500 gig on the PlayStation, and I know that we've got cartridges on the Switch, but the fact is a lot of people are going to download games. And with patches and DLC, even if you buy the cartridges, you're going to run into this problem. You're going to run out of space and you're going to be juggling. We've already seen games that are too big for the internal storage. Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2 comes in at 32 gig. Even Breath of the Wild comes in at 13.4 gig. So if you're downloading it digitally, you're going to be using a significant amount of the internal storage. Also, as I've already mentioned, the DLC is going to be coming for Breath of the Wild. So this is going to be a significant issue moving forward. And I don't think that the people who are trying to say that it's not a problem have really thought it through properly. It might not be a problem for some people. Some people might not mind carrying cartridges around and carrying SD cards around and switching them in and out. And we don't even know what happens with, switching in and out of these SD cards, if it's going to be an issue or not. So, I don't know. I don't know what you guys think. We've already had this situation in the past. If you look at the N64 in relation to the PlayStation 1 had CD storage, which allowed for a lot more capacity than the N64's cartridges. And the N64 suffered as a result. And I think, we could be seeing something similar here. There are other issues with the Switch, but one of the reasons it might suffer is simply down to capacity. Everyone else is embracing digital downloads. Sony are going into streaming. You've got membership programs like Microsoft's Game Pass, which requires a large amount of storage. If Nintendo want to move into any of those areas, I don't see them moving into streaming anytime soon, but say they wanted to do something like Game Pass, which incidentally would be phenomenal on a Nintendo system given their back catalogue, it would be great, except for, well, I've already talked about it. The fact is, this lack of storage is going to come back and bite them on the arse. And as I say, you guys might disagree with me. Let me know in the comments what you think. Give us a thumbs up if you agree with this one. Thumbs down if you don't, I don't mind. And let's have a chat as usual, because I do think this is an issue, and I am going to be doing a future video looking at the Switch in the round and trying to talk about pros and cons. And there are pros. You guys might not think that coming from me, but I do think there are some positives for the Switch. But let us know what you think about this memory issue. Do you think it's an issue? And if you don't, as usual, let me know. And as I keep saying, we can have a chat. And in the meantime, I'm going to grab myself a cup of tea again, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.